Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tessa, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely and amazing Cy.
Hi.
It's been quite a week at Austin, hasn't it, Cy?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
we had ice storm, and then we had some of our fellow residents, not some, hundreds of thousands of our fellow residents have been without power because of local power issues. And it has been one horrible headline after another.
Yeah.
And then
Water
add on
issues.
water issues. And these are things that, when you live in the United States, you think you're not supposed to worry about, right? Like having water in your house, having electricity in your house. And it's a, place of privilege. But at the same time, it's also something that you think about very commonly. So you add those headlines to what you already see in the news, which seems to be like doomsday every day, right? Like the economy is tanking. We have no access to fuel for our vehicles. The people in the north have no access to fuel for their heaters. Let's see what else is happening in the world. War, famine, like every headline is just drought. It's like everything is just always like bad, right? Like you don't see many headlines that are, look at this exciting invention or look what this person did. And you have to dig in your social media scrolls to like intentionally seek out positive news. So do you have any tips or tricks for us on how do you stay uplifted when all this information is coming at you that the world is ending, the sky is falling?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I think the first thing that really comes to my mind when I think about this is I have to really be protective of my mental and emotional input and state, right? That's influenced by that input because at the end of the day, I mean, we're very much receptors, if that makes sense, right? We receive this energy and it reflects and it projects out of us as well. And so for me it's just like when we talk about like who are you going to put around you in your life, right? Like when we talk about people and the energy that people bring, for me we have to be really protective about the energy that we allow from all of this, this onslaught of information. We have a lot of information flying at us, as you talked about. And sometimes it's intentional, we go seek out something, but for the most part it feels like more and more it's, I say onslaught because it feels like it's just coming from all over, even when you don't want it, even when you're not seeking it out. You're not like, oh, I'd really love to know, about people suffering somewhere right now. That's really not what you're looking for, but yet it creeps in and it finds its way to you, and really, I mean, it's sometimes quite traumatic, if I'm being honest, right? um and it's and I find it more and more difficult to avoid, really. That's, I feel like it's a struggle in a way. And now there are things you can do, of course. um One of the things I like to do is, for social media, for example, I just try to make some spaces fun spaces, fun and happy spaces, right? And
Yeah.
so, for like my Instagram, for example, I try just to follow only people that I just love, people that I just feel positive vibes from, good positive type of channels, and sometimes things will sneak in there, sure, but and sometimes they need to. Like, it's, sometimes we do need to talk about tough things, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we
Uh,
can't be blind
yeah.
to reality or anything
No,
like
no,
that.
absolutely not. But at the same time, you really kind of have to have like your, I don't know, somewhat sacred spaces, I suppose?
Yes, you have to
Yeah,
be
somewhere where
your
it can be a refuge, you know?
kind of like you have to be your own filter, right? Like,
Right, right, right. And you have to know what's what. It's like if I want some hard-hitting news, if I need to know what's going on, like, I know where to go. And if
exactly.
I want to just, like, have, like, a light afternoon of, like, "Oh, I wanna see cute pictures of my family," or, whatever, like,
Yeah.
I know where to go, and I just feel like there should be it's almost like healthy boundaries. It's almost
Mhm.
like healthy boundaries where it's like you should know where you can go for what. And so that would be my first thing is, like, do you have a sacred space? Like, are you, making healthy boundaries for certain things and knowing where to go when you need other needs, when you have other needs that need to be met that are, just for informational. And then of course just also, generally like having different opinions and different voices I think is also important because so many of the things you talk about, although they're real and all very very, very, valid. Um, Sometimes, and a lot of times, I should say, just more and more often, a lot of these headlines, especially, are just sensationalized, and they're over the top, and they're clickbait, and there's a whole science. Marketing has gone to a whole new height in this era, where stress and fear and all of these very very intense human emotions that instinctually we pay attention to, right? These are things that are being used against us. They're being weaponized in
Absolutely.
a way. Yeah.
It reminds me of, like, I don't know, let's say high school gossip where you
Mm.
hear that, George and Paul broke up and you feel really bad because George and Paul were so cute together. But then someone tells you, well, you know, George started, well, like being mean to Paul's cat or what have you. But it turns out George was never mean to the cat. Like George loved the
Right,
cat.
right.
But it's like the news has become something where it's no longer about the facts and it's
Mm.
about, as you point out, everything is sensationalized. And
Yep.
sometimes it's hard, especially when you go to what you view as trusted news sources and you
Right.
see these like sensationalized headlines. For instance, New York Times, a very reputable in the US, has a lot of economic articles that seem to say the economy spiraling into the ground
Mm. Mhm.
recently. But if you go
Mhm.
to sources that are more like economic driven, you hear the job numbers are high, this is not a recession, blah, 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 right? And I
Yep.
am no economist by nature, but it's just two different ways of presenting information. And you are so right. We have to like be our own filters. And one thing
Mhm.
I do when it comes to social media is I have no like alerts on for social
No. Oh
media.
yeah. Yeah. No. I try to have zero as little alerts in my life as possible. I'm so anti-notification. I feel like these notifications are like a Pavlov experiment that we're under, and I just cannot
Right?
believe that, like, the dinging, the bells, like, come on, like, this is ridiculous. Whoever even thought of this, I'm questioning them as human beings. But it really is again, it's like it's almost like we need to think about a tech health boundary. Like we really need to apply all of the things that we know and have and learned and grown into regarding healthy relationships. Like we have to have a healthy relationship with news, information, and technology. We really, really do. And if we don't, I mean, it literally has been shown to negatively impact mental health. Like literally, there has been studies that show at a certain point when you're consuming, I can't remember if it's 2 hours or more a day or something of that of nature, of news information, that it literally can have physical negative impacts on your mental and emotional health, and that's terrifying to me. And I feel like it's so unfettered. Like there's no regulation of it, there's no there's no, like, bureau of concerned parents or some or, not even parents, just people, like, worried about other people's health in this regard, and it's really an issue, and if it just goes completely unregulated, and not to say that regulation is even the solution, but it's unchecked, right? If
Yeah.
and it just worries me. I'm just really worried about people, and I do think that, we have, obviously, I don't think, I know we have a real mental health crisis in this country. And and this is absolutely part of it. I mean, there's no denying that, right? I mean, there's a lot of issues that contribute, but this is definitely one of them. And it makes me really worried that we don't have the tools, like we just have all of this information, like this again, this onslaught, but also like this volume of information that we've never been exposed to before, um, confronting this generation for the first time, and we're just trying to like deal with it, but we don't have any like readily available tools. We have not been we haven't been taught and trained and conditioned to deal with this kind of level of information or this kind of volume of information. And so, and also like unchecked information of course too. I mean, things have just changed so fast, it's just I feel very worried, like we're very vulnerable in those ways.
I had no idea, and it's fascinating to learn that having that much exposure to news can have physical
Mhm.
effects on people, which makes total sense. For instance, I have a parent who has, I would say, a mild addiction to having Fox News on the television,
Mhm.
which, you know, is problematic for our relationship in many ways,
Yeah.
mostly because of veracity of information for me.
Mm.
So, boundary is it might be a little radical, but I put parental controls on all of our televisions for when they visit so that Fox News is blocked. I did it not because of like some censorship thing, but
Yeah.
mostly because it inhibited our ability to interact as humans,
Right.
right? When
Right.
there was so much pull for whatever drama was occurring, and it could be, I think, any news channel or any channel at all. There was so much pull towards that information coming towards that person that
Mhm.
it not only created like a physical block, like they couldn't extricate themselves from watching the news,
Mm.
but it also like inhibited your ability to have conversations because it
Oh
was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
right, like when you're
Like, yeah,
exposed.
getting obsessive, yeah.
Yes, and then when
Yeah.
you're exposed to the same information over and over, which may or may not be true or is at minimum sensationalized, conversations become difficult because you
Right.
realize that their vocabulary and your vocabulary are different, right? It's like, I think what's happened in the United States is people have a different view of facts, like
Mhm.
what a fact is. And I don't think it actually has to do with like the dictionary's definition of fact anymore.
Right.
And it's more like opinion. And it's amazing how that exposure has led to a change in like how you communicate with people, how your vocabulary has been impacted.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
fascinating, right? And when you don't realize it's coming at you, you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. George's opinion about the color of cantaloupes is not actually a fact, it's George's opinion,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, the way that we even approach each other now, right? I mean, the way that we have discussion is no, 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 that's not true. This is what's happening, right? And it's
Right.
it's not about it's not about I mean, it's not based in like you said, fact. It's based like this is what's happening because this person was saying that. This
Yeah.
person thinks that, so that's what's happening, right? It's really interesting. And the other thing that's really interesting is just the fact that people get so enthralled with other, people's like you talked about getting obsessed, right? And really like
Mhm.
getting kind of in the throes of one place, and that's why I said like diversity of sources, I think is another like disruptor in this space.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, when you get so focused, hyper focused in one space, and it's kind of like coming out of a dark room, like you just get you just get acclimated to that water, right? And so when that happens, it's really interesting because fact and opinion start to blur. Um, because you just have this one source of information just telling you what you take for as the truth, which, I'm just going to say it's really it's really difficult time to know what the truth is anymore, right? And so I just want to
Absolutely.
recognize that, and recognize that, it's not just one source that is questionable, and or legitimate, right? There's not one legitimate source of information anymore, and it's a very difficult time. It's a very confusing time, and people get their news from all over the place. You talked about a TV channel network, but that's one of the sources that people are used to getting their news from, and
Hmm.
that's just like one of so many now. I mean, people are getting their news from social media in a way that I don't think anybody could have anticipated, honestly. I don't think I hope that that was not the plan.
Right.
I don't wanna be that cynical, but, who knows? But, it's just really interesting because even that, like, to me, that's the most telling thing, is if people are getting their information from social media, and we all do.
Hmm.
I don't believe that there's an I just that we're getting information regardless of whether it's news or other information. Um, it's you know, it's it's problematic because there's and it's problematic, and it could be positive in ways too. But there's no centralized verifications happening. There used to be such a thing with journalistic integrity and all of the things you had to do to make sure that you were, really telling a real story. And there's so many people involved with it, right? And not to say that that was perfect either. I don't know if there's ever been anything perfect, but what I can say is like things have been disrupted in a huge way. Things are different now. I mean, people can publish themselves in an instant. I mean, I could get on a Facebook Live right now, Instagram Live. I could get on TikTok in 2 minutes, and I could just say anything in the world that I want. I mean, it's amazing, right? And, like,
Right.
literally my my declaration into the world literally is published to the world in seconds, in minutes, like, it is a new era, and sometimes I think that we don't really even reflect on it anymore. Like, I mean, we're the internet age, right? And it's like, since the internet has hit the scene, it's just been kind of like milestone after milestone after milestone to the point where we're like, "Oh, yeah, we're taking over, space now, cool." Like, we just don't even think about it. It's amazing. It's
You are
amazing. It's
so
so
right. I
so
remember,
fast.
don't believe everything you have in the news, hear in
Mhm,
the
mhm,
news, right? Which
mhm.
is now ironic when I have parents who are addicted to a specific news source, which is fine.
Right.
Everybody has the right to their own news source and their own opinions,
Mhm,
which is great. My only concern was that it was impacting our personal relationships because it was an addiction. So don't want to
mhm,
offend any viewers of a certain news channel. Everybody has their own sources. But you're
mhm.
absolutely right. Like growing up, I remember, don't believe what you read. But now it seems as though everybody believes what they read or they see. And sometimes it is fantastic what people are able to publish
Mhm.
instantaneously, right? Like
Yeah.
the human rights violations and the police brutality and
Right. Right.
or this week's, I think, hype on social media, which was a FedEx driver spewing, mm,
Mm,
I would say, racist slash ethnic slurs towards a person who they were delivering a package to, right? Like
mm.
those things should be exposed. I mean, we should be a
Yep.
better society than that. That is fantastic. But when it's like stuff that we should rely on for like our basic human needs, like in Austin, whether or not everyone has electricity,
Right.
those things should be like fact driven, but they're not anymore. And
No.
nobody's questioning it. And it's so fascinating. Like, have we become lazy thinkers? Is there just so much information that we don't know how to source it for ourselves?
Right. Right.
Should we have to source it for ourselves? Because, as you mentioned, is there journalistic integrity anymore? And maybe if there is journalistic integrity, it's in the article, right? But the headlines are so
Right.
sensationalist. And I get it. Everybody's trying to run a business and there's
It's
marketing
money.
involved and it's money.
Mhm.
Yeah. But how do we
It's
as consumers
mhm.
swim in that kind of pond of information, right? Like,
It's
is it
definitely a
like,
minefield, yeah.
yeah, is it like my analogy from a previous show where it's just, sometimes there's just poop flying by on the water and you're just swimming through it. And we have to like look for the lily pads and avoid the poop information in the water.
Right. It's a yeah, it's a minefield, and I don't know that anybody's really figured it out, to be frank, I don't know that anybody has it all figured out because the truth is that we all need information,
Mhm.
and the information landscape, as we've been discussing, is imperfect to say the least.
Right? And if you're somebody like, say, me, or presumably you don't really want to censor people.
Right, right.
So how do you
Mhm.
find that like balance? And it's challenging, especially when information is coming at you so fast. It's in sensationalized formats, and it's from sources that you've otherwise deemed reputable and with a great deal of integrity. That's a challenge, right? Just like it is with your friends and your supporters, right? There's always somebody who provides that information but has a spin on it that might give you a little pause, shall we say.
Mhm, yeah.
And it's good to have them in your circle because, as you pointed out, diverse information, super important.
Absolutely, right. And it's the other very, like, social meta type of look at it as well is, we talk about how to navigate these troubled waters, and the first thing I think is, well, the best thing to do would be for every topic, get as many different sources as you can, vet that across your network as well of people who might have, might be closer to the issue, and fact check basically on as much as you can, with various sources, but all of that is a job. It's like literally another job, and that would be for every issue, the best case scenario, and I always just go to the I guess somewhat like humanist kind of perspective of who's gonna do that, and who has time for that? And people are literally struggling to survive and navigating all of
Yeah.
this terrible news of, climate catastrophe and sometimes economic catastrophe and other health catastrophes that are happening at the same
Hmm.
time. And so for me, the tragic thing about it is that it's an unfair fight. I wanna say that it really is, it really feels like a fight, first of all, which it shouldn't, but it does, and everybody is fighting for everyone's eyeballs and everyone's, clicks and everyone's attention, and maybe it's always been an unfair fight, right? Like, but the marketing has been a thing forever, and I don't mean to vilify marketing, it's not, terrible on its own, but at the same time, at the end of the day, people are making money off of your attention, off of, your clicks, off and all of that, and attention is something that, is in I've it seems like it's in low supply. It seems like maybe because there's so much fight for it, everybody wants the attention, social media is trying to get your attention, TV is still doing its thing, your work, of course, the politics of it all, the different things that you think you should be concerned with, right? And the pressure that we put on ourselves, right? To be an informed citizen, to be an
Hmm.
informed parent, to be an informed, friend, to be an informed employee. Um, it's a lot. I just want to recognize the humanity, the humanity of it all. It is a lot to ask of people in general, and, when we even go deeper into the fact of like there are people who they have no time, to really be doing research, which is what it is, right? To be doing vetting research. Um, but yet they still need information. And people know that, right? The people making money know that. It becomes about, what information is convenient, available, kind of like, hits the chords within you that ring true because you don't have time to figure out whether or not they really are true. All of that makes me just reflect on the fact that we're up against a lot. We're up
We
against a whole
are.
machine. Yeah.
And I wonder, is there anything that do people believe the sensationalized more than they believe kind of the
Mm.
analytical, I'm
Hmm.
trying to avoid the word fact, the analytical news sources,
Well, do they
right? It's
even
like,
have time to look at the analytical? Like
right,
I think headline reading is a whole new thing in itself, where it's like, oh, I can like, see 500 headlines in 2 hours, and I think I've learned something.
right. I mean, I think that is like judging a book by its cover. I mean,
Mhm.
or at least something similar to judging a book by its cover,
Absolutely.
which again we can add to the list of things that Tessa was told when she was young. Don't believe everything you read. Don't judge books by a cover. All seems to be thrown out the window in modern society, and maybe that dates me. That you know, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mhm. Don't judge an audiobook by its title. I d
Right?
How do we modernize this?
I mean,
But I mean, it's a real struggle, and I just yeah, recognizing that it's a struggle for all of us, I think is the first thing. Another thing that
we
that stems from that for me is, like, can we forgive can we, be have more grace for one another and for each other about not having all of the information all of the time?
yes. And my optimistic view of the world is if we all work to change our dialogue so it's not hyperbola and sensationalized in our own worlds, does that help slowly change the narrative? Other people also, refrain
Mhm.
from hyperbola and sensationalized language. Like, could there
Yeah.
be a, you know, trickle up effect, shall we say? Even though I hate the idea of trickle down, but I don't know what other phrase to use. Like, could that go to the masses where people start using more dignified? I don't know, it's not dignified, more specific language, right? It's as though we're using all these easy words
Mm.
to draw people in, when if we perhaps dug into our vocabulary, we might do a better job of explaining things.
Or just spend more time, honestly. And I mean, again, I just talked about how time is a precious resource, right? That we don't have a lot of. But I think it seems that one of the bigger issues is that we're trying to get so much information that it's quantity over quality, right? And so one of the things that um, you asked about tips, tricks, strategies, really. One of the things that I find myself doing is cutting a lot out, where I have gotten to the point where, there are things that I really care about deeply and I want to know about and that are pertinent to my life. And instead of just kind of opening the floodgates and letting whatever comes in come in, which is what I used to do. I mean, I used to go kind of to this one or two channels that I really liked, and I would just listen to all of the news that they would give me, and it was so much. And and I wouldn't even know what to do with it. I would just and sometimes I would almost feel like paralyzed in a way where I just felt like a little stunned by so much information, where I was just like because I'm a thinker, and so,
Mhm.
like, when I get a stimulus, like, my mind just goes, and it just keeps going, and so I'll be thinking about it at night, I'll be thinking about it in the shower, I'll be like, it just keeps rolling, and so yeah, being more selective is one of my strategies, where if I really care about something like, just yesterday, actually, I looked and seen that I had all these Google alerts for different types of news,
Mhm.
and I deleted most of them, and I put, like, the 2 or 3 that I really care about and really need to know about, and that's all that I'm looking for. For me, all the other things, all the other news that's out there, if I really need to know it, I will know it.
You don't
Is my theory. That's my theory.
you raise a fantastic point, right? Do we need to know everything?
Right, right.
I don't think I need to know
I don't
everything.
think so.
I don't have
Yeah,
the space or
exactly.
I
Bandwidth,
hate
come
to
on,
exactly, bandwidth.
come on.
Mhm.
It's okay
It's
to
like
have
we have
limits. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to recognize your own limitations. That's what I
and I
wanna
wonder
do.
and it's, such a way to protect yourself and keep yourself
Mhm.
uplifted to kind of curate the news and create these boundaries and for yourself. But it's almost as though we have or society has created this expectation that you have to know everything about
Yeah,
everything. And I'm
yeah,
like, hello, I thought Socrates was the one who said, I know nothing, essentially. I
yeah.
mean, I'm paraphrasing Game of Thrones, but yeah, you know nothing, Jon Snow. That's exactly how I would like to feel a lot of times because I don't need to know everything.
Right,
But I
right.
think there's this expectation in society that we're supposed to know everything. And you know what? I don't, and I don't want to know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, I literally tell people, "I don't wanna know." Like, they'll start telling me things, and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to know." And that's me
Yeah.
protecting my happy. It really is. It's like, I mean, I remember when I was young and people would ask me, "What do you wanna be when you grow up?" I was young, and I would say, "Happy."
Me too.
And so I still feel that way, honestly, and, the truth is this, I've gotten into all the rabbit holes, I've dug deep into history. I care deeply about history. I was watching some historic things this morning on YouTube. I'm really interested in Native history right now, and so exploring my heritage, and so I started just learning about that, but it's very specific. It's something that I really care about right now. It's something I want to know, and I have a good base. I mean, that's one thing I would say is that, I don't know who's listening, but I think that I'm in a place in my life where I can say I want and it's not even limited. I feel like I should use a different word. It's not limited. It's specific, intentional, targeted information, right? That's the kind of information that I'm seeking because I have different missions in my life and mind, right? And to move forward on those, I know I have to focus. And that's one of the things when we were just talking about attention, everyone's vying for our attention and they're splitting our attention in so many ways, and it made me think of the fact of or the strategy of divide and conquer. We know in history so many people have used these tactics to divide and conquer peoples, and I actually am starting to think, what if our attention is being divided so that it can be conquered, right? Because when you have intention and you have focus, you will actually move towards what you're trying to move towards. But when your attention is diffracted, if it's pulled all over the place, it's less likely to happen. And so I I I think even more and more with this conversation that it's so important for us to be intentional about the information that we are seeking, that we're absorbing, and that we're applying, right? Because when you're doing that, then you can actually have focus and you can actually move with intention towards what you really set as your priority and not what other people set as your priority.
That is so well said. I'm going to perhaps make that lovely and intellectual viewpoint a little more pedestrian for my brain. And I think, as somebody who likes design and design aesthetic, it's as though you want to curate the
Mhm.
kind of aesthetic of what you're viewing, right?
Mm.
And being active about it as opposed to being, say, passive about it. Because I got this
Exactly.
idea
Yes.
that it was this like passive idea that this
Yes.
information was coming at us, but we
Yep.
didn't have the walls or the boundaries to put up, as opposed to us having, say, these gates that we would open for search and information to flow in,
Mhm.
because that is the curated information we want to know. And occasionally, maybe we want to have a secret passageway to get information for,
Mhm.
I don't know, how tall horses are, whatever it might be, right? It's like sometimes there is a place and time to like really go down a rabbit hole for odd information. And I think we all do it and we all should because I think it's a learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah, curation is exactly right, and I love the language of passive versus active because then you're talking about power now, right? And this whole thing that we're discussing, this whole topic is there are a lot of power dynamics actually. You know, we haven't named it that, but it is. There's a lot
Oh,
of power
absolutely.
dynamics and there's a lot of people that have, you know, again, different motives, right? And they're trying to wield their power over you. And you can find your power with intentionality and with being active versus passive. You know, the more passive we are, the more likely we're being taken advantage of, right? I mean, just that's the way that I think about it anyways. And so I appreciate that language because it means that we can recognize what's happening and we can choose to take power and have intentionality in where we're going. And there's no reason why we can't support each other in that. That's the next step that I think that's missing. And I'm grateful that you brought this topic today because we don't talk about this. I don't think I've ever had
We don't.
this conversation really with anybody. I've had a lot of conversations about and people bait me. Like I'm just going to be completely frank and say that like I am bad at this. Like I am bad at being like, "Oh, I'm not going to talk about that issue that I don't, you know, that maybe I think I know something about everything and I don't want to. Like why do I know about this, right? Somebody starts a conversation about this and I'm like, "Well, actually, you know, I just read this, I know this." And why? Why do I even know these things? I should like I don't need to. It's unnecessary and I think it's actually distracting. I think
Oh,
it's really
absolutely.
just it's just a distraction and I'm always looking for this distraction because I've been calling this out since since my 20s of just like we have so much work to do. You know, when you really do see the and it's important. It's really important to me. I know that everybody listening has something that's important to them that they want to change in the world. I want the world to be a different place in many ways. And, you know, the only way to get there is through, in my opinion, or my theory really is to organize, to bring like-minded people together, to set intentionality and to work hard as hell, you know, regularly, daily, yearly, year after year until you get there, generation after generation sometimes, right? To get to these big, big goals of societal change. And so how are we gonna do that if we're distracted by a bunch of noise
Mm.
and a bunch of headlines and a bunch of clickbait, right? Like that really worries me in a lot of ways and it makes me it just makes me more intent on combating this, right? Because that passivity is what's going to get us. It really is. That's what's gonna throw us off the track.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's also the idea that you have relinquished control. Right? For
Mm.
me, that's a big one, right? Like, I
Mhm.
don't like giving up my power. I don't like feeling like I'm being controlled. And when you,
Mhm.
and some of the language you've used, I realized, wow, this is really trying to control not only what I'm thinking about, but how
Mm.
I'm thinking about it and how I'm
Yep.
communicating it to other people. I'm like, oh, I don't want to use P word, but that's sounding a little like propaganda, right? When it's
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
change how people are thinking about things. And instead of allowing them to have that control, I just want to take it back because that's my personality. And I hope that
Mhm.
when we are around like minded people and people who are interested in expanding their minds and are open to viewing other things, that when we're using the language of, I, maybe it's sourcing and saying, I read this in the whatever, the Allegheny News, right? Or I read this here. Maybe that would help. Maybe it would help not to talk about it. Maybe it would help to desensationalize some of it. And
Mm.
I think about, just word choice in general. I think I mentioned this before in another episode. Like when you are online shopping, especially like making a grocery list and you see vegan attached to lettuce, you're like, yeah, obviously, right? And
I would hope so.
but you do see those like kind of crazy little
Mhm,
statements. It's like, yeah,
mhm.
right? Like, yes,
It's
that
that
squash
emotional
has.
trigger, though. It's another emotional trigger.
Hmm.
They're trying to tap into something.
Exactly. Or your squash is gluten free. Well, yes, 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 it is. But those things actually occur in the
Oh my
way.
gosh, this is so meta because it's like what you're talking about is actually why people think that that's good. They think that it's
Mhm,
good because of the informational onslaught of all of these nutritional things going around and what's good and what's bad for you. And
mhm,
people literally, again, based on this conversation, do not have the time to even
mhm.
fully know or really explore all of the things that are floating around out there. And so they just get kind of like mixed into this big like stew of information. And it's like you're like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, like I've seen that in the stew. I've seen that chunk. Like I think that's something important. I think that's something important. So I should probably buy this. And it all ends with buying the thing. And that's what kills
exactly.
me because it's like this information. I don't even know what to call it, but this whole information thing is it ends in that. Like that's the motive at the end of the day is what are you going to buy? What are you going to click? How are you going
Mhm,
to produce money for other people? And it's makes me really sad. I'm just gonna say that it's kind of tragic because information is good
yes.
generally.
I think we
I
can
you
agree on
know,
that,
I
yes.
wanna say information is good. It should be something that's used to inform and educate and enlighten. Um, it should be used as a communal resource, right? To get
Mhm,
to solutions and equity and fairness and just opportunity, and it's being hijacked. Information is being hijacked against us, and what are we gonna do about it? Yeah.
and
How do
I
we
mean,
claim it? How do we reclaim it?
how do we reclaim it, and how do we continue to reclaim it, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think of one of our other challenges, which was how do we respond to "How are you?" in a way that is more vulnerable, and you gave this wonderful example of someone you knew who just would say something personal and vulnerable, but related to something so specific, whereas you realized they were sharing, but they weren't really sharing at the same time.
Mm.
But it
Yeah.
created that environment like, "Oh, wow, I now know something interesting about that person."
Mhm.
And so I have been doing it, but I have to be intentional about it to remind
Yeah.
myself to say something more interesting than, "Fine, how are you?"
Right.
And I think it
Right.
might be the same here, right? Like, how do we continue to be intentional about not only the information we take in, but how we then communicate it to others?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that seems to be a big part of it. It seems to be a big part of it because there's a culture going around this information stew, and that culture is for us to talk past each other. We're hurling stuff at one person, they're hurling stuff back, we're kind of dodging each other. It's kind of like a game of dodgeball. Like that's what we're doing. We're
Right?
just like finding these balls of information and throwing them at one another, and we're trying to dodge it and be like, "No, that's not a real ball. This is the real ball." It's a very, very interesting time. Um,
And then you raise a fascinating point, right? Like that
yeah.
we have become so binary about everything, right? Like
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
a clear answer and a clear right answer and a
Right.
clear wrong answer. But
Right.
as lawyers, we know, yeah, there's never
Oh, yeah.
really an answer. It's all like gray,
Uh-uh.
muddled mesh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and we can make arguments for both. That's the
Right.
amazing thing about legal education. It's like everything that you think is that there's a truth or there's just one there's not. There's just there never is, and it's humans are so much more complex than that. It's a beautiful thing in a
Yeah.
way.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
humans are so complex and so interesting, and if you look at history, if you're a lover of history, you know that, entire wars or entire eras have been defined by whatever somebody was able to convince people of. Not the truth, right? Just
Mhm.
whatever people were able to convince some other group of people of. And
Mhm.
so it's really interesting and it just shows the complexity of this whole conversation. And what I would lend um from my perspective and from my value base and from my culture really is that, we have to remember the humanity of it all and remember each other in all of this, right? Information should be great, but what's more important about the information that's out there is how it's used. And what you're touching on is really about changing our culture and our habits, right? And our relationships with one another, our
Mhm.
interpersonal interactions with one another. And for me, that's the most important thing because there's always going to be a bunch of information. We're in the information age now. It's only going to get more and more and more, wild and interesting. I mean, you've seen the Chat GPT thing stuff happening this recently being released and how you can really like have artificial intelligence generating language for you now and generating information which I'm sure we'll see even more of and don't even realize how much we're already consuming, right? Yeah, like it's just become open to, in mass and mainstream ways where it's going to be even more so, but I mean people have been using this technology for a while now, right? So, my thing is, we're talking about artificial intelligence and robots now and all of this information that's happening with technology. And I think, the biggest lesson that we can take from this or the biggest, opportunity we have from this conversation is to really pose to ourselves and challenge to ourselves, how are we going to use all of this to make our relationships more beautiful and more whole and more equitable and more kind. That I hope should be our intention. I hope that that is what we prioritize because if our priority is you know rooted in something that is not good, rooted in vice, I would say, then information, it's just like any other tool can be used for evil instead of good kind of thing, right? Like we can use information to, you know, um, it can be based in ego, right? When we're talking about everybody feels like they should have all the information and know what's right and have an opinion about everything. That's ego, baby. That's all ego. That's all ego. That's you wanting to prove yourself that you are smart, you are intelligent, you are informed, you have the opinions, you know what's right, and you can one up somebody, you can show them, you can make the point that's better. That's all ego, and ego is not a fun place to live. And if you're struggling with ego, and it overtaking your life in a lot of ways, um, it might be something that you look into in regards to where your self-esteem is at right now. Because your ego is something that helps protect your self-esteem, and it helps you try to find ways to affirm who you are and your worthiness because your self-esteem might be fragile right now. It might be low for one reason or another. And I would implore people to do self-exploration and to do self-healing. And I know this feels like it could be a strange, astray from the conversation that we started off having, but it's really not. All the roads lead back to the inside. and and your interactions with the world and your interactions with information and your interactions with people and information it all relates to your solid base. Where are you internally? What's your relationship to yourself before relationships to all of these external factors? And so that is really where I hope that the conversation lends to and grows into, continues onward towards, because at the end of the day, information again is just another tool. It's another factor that is used between human relationships. And when we have whole people, then there's not really a lot of factors that can kind of mess up that dynamic, right? Those solid bases, bringing a whole human to the conversation is really the best thing that you can do, regardless of all the factors, I would say.
I have a very practical way of, I think, accomplishing this. I love the campground rule. I am not a camper. I don't like sleeping outside with bugs. I don't like sleeping in a tent near bugs. However, I love the campground rule and think it should be applied to places, people, things, animals, everything. The basic idea is leave everything in a better position than you found it,
Mm,
right? And I think maybe
mhm,
this applies to ourselves too when we're seeking out news. Make sure that you left yourself in a better
mm,
place than you started. And I think that also works with how we convey this information to other people, right? Make sure when you are conveying it, you are providing the other person something that you view as better than the current situation, right? Don't
mhm.
leave them feeling lost and in peril because you decided to relate to that the Fed raised interest rates another 1/4%, and this means that the world is ending,
Right,
right? Like, find
right.
ways to communicate that make the story more full and round so that people can take away from it what they want to take away from it, as opposed to what you want them to take away from it, which
Mhm.
essentially has turned us all into little propaganda machines, right? If we only
Oh, yeah.
want people to take one view from what we're
Yep,
saying.
yep. And I
So,
love that you're challenging us to think about the other person's well-being and their
mhm,
I think that's a beautiful point. I appreciate that point, Tessa, because so much of it is sometimes, like you said, we want people to take on our viewpoint again, playing into the ego, wanting to be
mhm,
right, right? But also, when you walk into or enter into a conversation or interaction with somebody else, checking your intention for this conversation, just having an intention for the conversation,
yeah,
that is so important. And then further having that intention be, I want to leave this person better off than I found them, than when this conversation started. I'm obsessed with that because, there's so many times, especially with people that I love so dearly, that I know are fragile in different ways, where I mean, I'm telling you, this is one of my struggles where I want to be right. I like being right. I became a lawyer because people knew that I like to be right. And having that humility, right? Like being humble in a way, to join a conversation and say, this isn't about me and my ego and me being right, right? But it's about having a lovely conversation with this person that I love,
mhm,
and maybe lifting them up as much as I can within this conversation, even
mhm.
if it's a hard hitting conversation that's about, I don't know, I'm not even gonna mention something because I feel like it will be negative, but like maybe it will be about something that is not a positive story. Maybe it's something that's really hard to talk about, but having that intention that, like, I'm looking at this other person and I'm seeing this other person and wanting this other person to be well after this conversation.
Mhm.
And that's the most important thing. Not to throw out all the facts that you might have to offer, or all the knowledge you might have to offer, or the wisdom or advice you might have. Not to throw all of that out, but to give it in a way that can be heard, first of all, which I'm always a fan of, right? Like, giving people
Yes.
information in a way that can actually be heard. That's one of the
Yes.
other things that I should have just started off with. You 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 can say whatever you want and talk about whatever you want and source whatever you want, cite whatever you want. But if you're not presenting it to this person in a way that they can receive it, what's the point of even having this conversation, first of all? Uh,
Right?
but but then being
Mhm.
a steward of this conversation and honoring this other person's well-being, I love that. That's my new favorite. And I wonder if that can be somehow a challenge that we all take on of just, again, not being you, not throwing out what you know or what you have to offer, but setting the intention at the beginning of the conversation that I care about this other person and their well-being,
Mhm.
and this conversation will be crafted, with that in mind.
Yeah. Something that I think is perhaps forgotten in when we're thinking about caring for the other person and their well-being, when you're doing that, you're also caring for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
imagine a conversation where you are helping this person by providing information that will help them in some way or make their world better or at least does not harm them at minimum, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
When you do that, you're also, I think, helping yourself because it feels better to leave people in a good position than
Oh
it
yeah.
does to like tear them down or provide
Yep.
information that destroys their way of thinking or whatever it might be. But
Absolutely.
you don't want to leave a conversation with somebody you care about or even any human being in a way that is just like, well, that really sucked.
And I can't believe that they think that, and I hate them for that, like,
Yes,
you're
there's a
just hurting
judgment.
yourself too.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. We've all done it at some point in time
Sure.
because no one is perfect. But I think if we have that goal of making sure we have cared for ourselves and others in a way and provide information in a way that leaves everybody in a better place, I think they could I think they could achieve some great things in the world. And it might help us with all
Absolutely.
that information out there because we won't be allowing it all to soak in.
Yeah, and we'll also just be more, I mean, we'll just be better listeners, frankly. I've observed that one of the issues with what we're talking about today is that you start to get, I mean, it's beyond, like, even having blinders. It's that you reject any information now because we have to have shortcuts because there's so much information, right? That we have to have shortcuts or we wouldn't even be able to function, right? But the shortcuts are doing damage in a way where we can't be critical thinkers anymore. We have to just, nope, let's cut all of that information out. And so everything you're giving me, if it's not from where I'm getting mine, then, like, nope, I can't accept that, and it makes us worse thinkers, frankly. Like, we're we're just not we're not benefiting from the diversity of information, and it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because when you have that happening, then you get what we're seeing today, which is, mass polarizations, just people completely, fractured and so far away from one another that it's hard to find any middle ground anymore. So, yeah, I appreciate just bringing it back to the humanity of it all, seeing the humanity in each other, seeing the humanity in ourselves, and giving each other grace enough to say we can have a conversation that honors both of our well-being, and can be respectful, frankly, without it just divulging into something that is really not productive for anybody or healthy for anybody. So we could get there if we want to and if we set that intention.
And I think it's a good reminder that when we set boundaries and healthy boundaries, whether it relates to interactions or what type of information you're going to allow into your world, those things can be positive and good. Don't think of boundaries
Yeah.
as, something I'm warding off evil. You
Yep.
are instead building yourself up.
Absolutely. And allowing you the space to grow. I think about it kind of like plants, even though I am not a gardener like you. But I think about it like that, where it's like you have to literally set your boundaries so you have enough room to grow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're not seeing or interacting with other things in your environment. It's just you need this space. You need this much space, and that's okay. That's a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, that makes me feel very peaceful, right? Like knowing that, hey, it's okay for me to censor some information for myself because I'm
Mhm.
protecting myself and I'm allowing the experts to deal with that information,
Yes, yes,
right? Like I am not an
yes.
expert on everything, so I don't need to know. And
Exactly.
when I need to go seek out that information, I can go seek it out, but it doesn't
Mhm.
mean I need to allow it in all the time.
Yeah. And if there's something really important that you feel like you need to be digging deep into, I mean, that happened several times during, the various crises of COVID at the era of COVID. I was getting into some of those peer support articles. I was like, I feel like I need to, I need to go this deep at this moment right now, and
Mhm.
find experts, of course, and find and you have to make a call on which experts you're
Yeah.
going to trust, all of that good stuff. But it's such a good point. It's one of the things that has helped me let go of a lot of things, especially like global, geopolitical type of stuff. I just challenge myself to say, is this what I'm going to spend my life doing? Am I so concerned with these issues that I'm going to become an expert in this area and I'm going to become an activist in this area and I'm going to do this all the time? Is that what I'm going to do? And when I faced that question and said, no, I'm going to use my time and energy here locally doing this, then I was able to say the reason I was able to let that go is because I was looking at other people and saying, oh, there are good people doing that work. There are champions there. There are people that are dedicating their lives and expertise to that. And that just gave me comfort because sometimes we feel like we have to do it all, and that's like the understatement of the world, right? But we do. We feel like we have to do it all. We're responsible for everything, right? Because we know about everything. I mean, think about the past where people just didn't know about this stuff. They
Yeah.
just didn't.
It
And
sounds so blissful.
it does, and, like, ignorance is bliss, but now we don't have that luxury. We have so much information, and when you know about it, you feel responsible. I mean, it's just as
Yeah.
simple as thinking, like, there's somebody in this town right now who's, like, run out of gas, but I don't know
Yeah.
about it. I don't know where they are. I don't know that they need my help, but if I see them and I know that that's happening and they ask me for help, well, now I have to make decisions and choices. And it's the same thing with all this information is that we think that we have to be involved in all of it. And the truth is we don't. And one of the things that has helped me get by that is by seeing that there are other people there doing the good things. And so I can leave it to them and I can be activated when necessary, but until that day comes, I need to be doing the work that I need to do here. And so that gives me comfort at least.
It does to me too. And I think this is why I like the campground rule so much because that provides me comfort knowing that
Mhm.
I'm doing my best to leave everything
Yeah,
in a better place.
absolutely. And we can also, I just feel compelled to say, like, we can also forgive ourselves for, like, I
Yes.
talked about the fact that, this has not been my practice. We're literally figuring out a practice right now as we talk it out, and I think that's so beautiful that we've, just made the space and time to challenge ourselves to even figure out this question. When you presented this topic, I said, "That's a tough one." Because it is, right? But yet we still did it, and we still talked about it, and I love that people are challenging themselves, to take this on and to just because reflection is the first step to be reflective of it and try to be intentional and find solutions around it, and, forgive ourselves for not getting it exactly right, before this point and after this point because it won't be perfect, but just like the idea of, trying to introduce more vulnerability, into our casual interactions, it's the same kind of challenge that we're gonna pose now of this is the intention that we wanna set. Now can we put it into a habit and practice to honor this intention that we've set?
To say to everyone that this is my time to give you permission to be flawed and to accept the fact that you are perfect as you are, which doesn't mean actual perfection. It means you are perfect as you are, flaws and all. So if this doesn't turn out to be a 100% flawless event for you, that is a okay. Just do
Mhm.
your best.
Absolutely. That is the human experience in a nutshell, isn't
Yeah, totally.
it?
But, all those expectations of society make us think it should be otherwise, that we're all little AI robots who could perform perfectly all the time.
Oh man, we're gonna have to talk about that soon. I have a lot of thoughts.
Yes. Perhaps you will join us next time and we'll talk about AI, something that I am certainly no expert in.
None of us are, but
No,
it's coming
oh, yeah, it is.
and we're
It's already
already
here in
yeah,
some
and we're already
ways.
interacting with it, so we're gonna talk about it. But I'm so grateful to you, Tessa, and for you bringing this topic today and for the conversation and all of the amazing things that have come out of it. So thank you so much for another wonderful uplift.
And thank you, Cy, and everyone who is listening. I hope that the campground rule serves you well also.
Take care.